Hello again, YouTube. We spent another 12 hours today playing Last Epoch. Fantastic. Made ourselves a caster Void Knight, which is a little different than most of the Void Knight skills, but I did it because I could. We are focusing exclusively on void damage and spell damage, using Devouring Orb as our main skill. The spec here for Devouring Orb, very important. We've jumped out this way for the increased duration, the extra Abyssal Orb scales with void damage and spell damage stuff for the extra things. So each orb that I put around myself, which are these, and they just follow me around, they pump out these extra little dots that you see right here. Those dots will seek in on enemies automatically, and of course we can stack these up as we run around so that a buttload of them exist. They will all seek out enemies, we will see that a little bit later, and explode when they hit enemies for area damage, so the clear is fantastic. We take Dark Torrent to make those happen as often as possible. Jump down here for the Devouring Orb orbits you so that it chases me around. I've gone out this side for 10% move speed, but I'd be very interested to see if the 50% greater distance per allocated point here would have been better, but without the ability to respec within the node, I'm not going to test it. And we take this one, which is the orbs themselves do damage if they impact enemies, the ones that spin around you. That's where almost all my single target comes from. And this one to buff up the single target on it. The only other skills we've taken here is we've taken this sprint one just to get cooldown recovery and a bit of defenses as we run them, because there's nothing else to run. And we've taken this one for our debuff and damage, so we've got cooldown recovery as much as we can, and lowering the mana cost. And we've got this one that makes it so that hitting an enemy with Abyssal Echoes also inflicts them with Temporal Blight. Temporal Blight is just a debuff, lowering their attack speed, cast speed, and move speed, making it that buff longer and making that buff have increased effect. That's all this one is. It's basically just a debuff on enemies. So our gear is focusing on spell damage as much as that as we can get, and attunement as much as that as we can get, as well as void damage and just normal resistances. We will see through Sentinel, we've come through both the block nodes, some health and vitality, because there's nothing else in Sentinel that's useful for this build. So you will have to level it a little bit as something else, probably the Cyclone equivalent skill that I can't remember the name of because it was pretty good. Then jumping in to Void Knight, I took this one to begin with. Probably should have been Devouring Blade 5 points. Again, can't really respec it easily, so we're not changing it up to World Eater, which is all of the leech we will ever need in the world. 24% of void damage, leech does life, fantastic. This one for 10 attunement and some damage. This one, super important, lots of damage comes out of that. 100% chance to inflict a future attack 2 seconds later that deals 50 void damage, which is scaled by all of our increased void damage stuff. So that one's super nice for damage. We've used those things to pump us all the way up to here, where we got 5 points in that to get, again, more void damage. And now I'm pumping into Dread, which is just, again, more void damage and speed. I have picked up this hammer recently just to test it out. I have it spinning around me and over here to do void damage stuff. I tested it a bit. It's cool and it's pretty looking, but I don't think it's really worth the time in this kind of build. It would be worth its time to build around itself, but it's because it's an attack and not a spell, a lot of the stuff I've got doesn't scale it, and the height differences in the ground, when you stand in the wrong spot, you'll see them disappear. When you stand in the right spot, you'll see they last forever. But because of this, I feel very awkward using it, and I don't love it. So let's run out here, pick something quickly, and show you what the run looks like. I did move last epoch over to an SSD, which certainly helped with my load times, but oof, load times are still very slow. Right, so there's a little bit of wind-up time at the beginning. If you have to immediately fight mobs, it's not great because you need to get at least 2 or 3 of these balls out before you start doing damage. And the single target is okay on this build, but for the bigger, tankier stuff, not great. The clear is what it excels at. So, now the best part is you don't have to target anything, and I'm using right click to put out that shout for the debuff and also a little bit of extra damage, and just the only way to use my mana. You'll notice that the leech here is really good. But I do often skip some of the bigger mobs just because it's not worth my time, not because I have any trouble killing them. They're just not worth the time. Ooh, we leveled up. Let's jump a bit more damage into it. Oh, there's a little bit of crashing. Oh, don't crash on me. Oh, nope, that was just lag. Okay. You can see we're pretty damn tanky even when we do take damage, and you see my life flicker. The leech just is insane. The leech is really good. We're surviving purely off leech, pretty much. So this is area, what are we in? Area level 55? And I will demonstrate the hammer while we're doing this fight, because it does look very pretty and it does do an appropriate amount of damage. You can add it, you can weave it into what you're doing because of the cooldowns here, but I don't know. I don't think it's a very important part of the build. I don't think it's very important at all. I think the devouring orb on its own does more than enough. You don't have to target anything. You can spend most of your time dodging abilities, making sure you don't get hit. We are not abusing any overpowered ward things with this build, so it's very unlikely to get hit. And damage is quite good. Pick up whatever you like. Yeah. All in all, this has been a very fun character that I've very much enjoyed. The leveling with Cyclone was great, other than the first 10-15 levels where I ran out of mana constantly. Didn't seem to be anything I can do about that, but after I picked up some stuff on it, it was much better. So yeah, I think Void Knight caster, solid option, and I will see everybody later.